Hi, I'm Katie Halcrow with Power Up Prep, and I'm super excited today to take you through some tips and strategies to help you power up your ACT. If this is your first time with us, first, welcome. Second, check out the link below. There, you're going to find the ACT questions and the note sheets that you can do along with these videos. All right, so let's get those materials together, and we're going to be ready to power up. Okay, so we've just gone over a lot of question types, but now we're going to go over the final question type, which are outside knowledge questions. And so outside knowledge questions are questions where they're not answerable with information from the passage. You have to know some science background in general, or just use logic in order to answer the questions. So if we're talking about using logic to answer the question, a question could say something along the lines of, in order to see the stars at their brightest point, what time should you watch them? And so the answer to that question would, of course, be when it's darkest, right? So if your options are 6 a.m., 9 a.m., 3 p.m., and midnight, you would go with midnight because that's in the middle of the night when it's dark outside, so you're going to see the stars the best. So that's an example, a very simple example, but an example of using your own logic in order to answer a question. So you don't really need any specific science knowledge in order to do that, but you do need to use your own logic in order to do that. Okay, there are also some specific topics, like science topics, that you need to know on the science section in order to do some questions. First topic I want to talk about is photosynthesis. So what happens during photosynthesis? What do plants take in, and then what do they produce? Well, they take in carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight. So they take in CO2, H2O, and sunlight, and then they produce oxygen and glucose. So glucose is sugar, right? So like plants produce fruits, so you can kind of remember that. So they produce glucose. So they take in sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water, and then they produce oxygen, which is O2, and glucose, so like a sugar. So that's what happens during photosynthesis. Okay, so that's something that you need to know for the test. Another thing you need to know for your test is the pH scale. So, do you know your pH scale? It's on a scale of 14. Okay, so it's on a scale of 14. 1 to 6 are acids. So like level 1 to level 6, or a pH of 1 to a pH of 6 is an acid. 7 is neutral. And then level 8 to level 14, so a pH of 8 to a pH of 14 is a base. So as you go down on the pH scale, it's more acidic, and as you go up on the pH scale, it's more basic. Okay, so that's another thing that you need to know, just outside knowledge. The next topic that I want to talk about are cells. So when we're looking at a cell, or like thinking about a cell, what's at the center of our cell? At the center of our cell is the nucleus. And then what's inside of the nucleus? Protons and neutrons. So protons and neutrons are on the inside of the nucleus, and then electrons kind of orbit around the outside, like on the outer perimeter of the cell. So nucleus has the protons and the neutrons, and then the electrons are kind of like floating on the outside. Protons and neutrons are the things in the cell that have mass. So, for example, oxygen has 8 protons because the atomic number is 8. And then the atomic mass is 16. And so that means that it has 8 protons and 8 neutrons, because those are the only things with mass in the atoms. Electrons have negligible mass, so they don't really count towards the mass. So the atomic number is determined by the number of protons, and then the atomic mass is determined by the number of protons and the number of neutrons added together. So for oxygen, 8 protons because its atomic number of 8, and then there are 8 neutrons as well because the atomic mass is 16. Last thing to know about protons, neutrons, and electrons are their charges. So electrons have a -1 charge, and protons have a +1 charge, and then neutrons have a net charge of 0. So neutrons have a 0 charge, protons +1, electrons -1. Protons and neutrons are the things with mass in them. Electrons have negligible mass, and the protons and neutrons are inside the nucleus. Okay, so that's cells. So I want to talk about one other thing that's related to cells, and that's positive and negative charges. So positive charges and negative charges, do they attract or repel? They attract, like opposites attract. But like signs, so a positive and a positive will repel, and negative and negative will also repel. So like signs repel, but opposite signs attract. So, okay, so now you got it. You got photosynthesis, pH scale, cells, and positive and negative charges. So we're good to go. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope that this was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to leave them below. We love to hear from you. Also, if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button so that you won't miss out on any of our curriculum or other tips and tricks that can help you power up your ACT.